I bet you're watching this with a couple of other apps open right now. If so, hey, you're Gen Z. And if not, don't go anywhere because you definitely have a Gen Z in your life. Kid, a younger coworker, a brother, a friend, and chances are you don't fully understand them. In 10 minutes, we'll break down the most misunderstood generation on the planet, Gen Z, so you can finally see yourselves from the outside. Everyone else, so you can finally understand them, including why Gen Z drives everyone crazy, but is actually right. Quick version. Gen Z are the people born roughly between 1997 and 2012, the first generation that doesn't remember a world without the internet. They grew up inside it. And here's the cool part. This is the first generation in history with a shared childhood across the whole planet. Moscow, Brazil, Tokyo, everyone watched the same cartoons. SpongeBob, Avatar, Ben 10. One yellow guy made kids laugh in dozens of languages at the same time. That had never happened before. Here's where it gets interesting. Gen Z is arguably the freest generation in history. Don't like the job? They just leave. They love to travel. They don't cling to one place. They won't sit in the same position for 40 years. And at the same time, they grew up in a wild era. Crises, instability, prices shooting through the roof. And that's the paradox that unites Gen Z all over the planet. The freest generation ever, and at the same time, the one under the most pressure. Everything else grew out of that. So let's go through the things they always get blamed for and why it's unfair. Accusation number 1. Gen Z can't focus. Endless ADHD, clip thinking, they won't even finish a short video without skipping ahead. And yeah, it's true. Look at why. They grew up in a world where everything switches every couple of seconds. Feed, stories, reels, 100 notifications an hour. Their brains simply tuned themselves to that speed. It's not a malfunction. It's an upgrade to the reality they actually live in. A Gen Z can process more information in a minute than older generations manage in an hour. They didn't lose the ability to focus. They learned to filter a flood that would drown everyone else. Accusation number 2. Their humor is disturbing. Jokes about burnout, about how nothing matters, dark memes. Older people are shocked. That's just cynicism. They've forgotten how to be happy. Well, no. Psychologists explain it directly. When you laugh at the worst thing happening to you, you gain control over it. The fear you joked about doesn't hold you as tightly anymore. So Gen Z's dark humor isn't a broken mind, it's armor. A generation that learned to laugh where people used to just quietly break down. And honestly, that's pretty great. But there's a third accusation, and it makes older people the angriest of all. Gen Z gets called entitled narcissists who think the world owes them everything. They want balance right away instead of grinding. They demand respect from day one. They set boundaries. They won't sacrifice themselves for a job. A spoiled generation that wants it all, now. And yes, Gen Z does want a lot. According to major surveys, work-life balance is their number one priority, above career and above money. That's not arrogance. It's something their parents never had the courage for. Older generations believed that suffering at work was normal, that it was just how things should be, that enduring it was honorable. And they burned out. Gen Z simply refused to believe that. They were the first to say out loud, I'm a human being, not a resource. I have the right to rest, to respect, to a life beyond work. What looks like they think the world owes them is really just boundaries that should have been set a long time ago. Gen Z isn't spoiled. They just stopped mistaking suffering for normal. Okay, but if all of that is true, where does all the anxiety come from? Almost 80% of young people admit they feel lonely, at least sometimes. That's real. And here's the explanation that takes a huge amount of blame off Gen Z. In any teenager, the part of the brain responsible for emotions and for what others think of me matures earlier than the part responsible for the brakes and self-control. That's how all humans are built. And here's the twist. Gen Z is the first generation that, at exactly that vulnerable moment, was handed social media, a machine that pounds the most sensitive button around the clock. Comparison, likes, approval. So Gen Z isn't weak. They're the first test subjects of an experiment no one had ever run before. Their anxiety isn't a malfunction. It's the normal reaction of a normal person to an abnormal load. And there's something this generation has that no one before them did. They're the most accepting in history. Respecting people who aren't like them is the default for them. They're smarter with money than their parents were at the same age. They start saving and learning about finances earlier. They drink less, they smoke less, and they were the first to decide that taking care of your mind isn't shameful, it's normal. And they're endlessly inventive. They grew up with the internet as a tool, and they know how to create, not just consume. So let's be honest, Gen Z is not a broken generation. They laugh where others broke down. They leave the places that hurt them instead of enduring for a lifetime. And they hold on despite a brain that gets hammered 24 hours a day. And despite all the headlines about a lost generation, fresh data says the opposite. Younger Gen Z feel that their life is good more often than any generation before them at the same stage. Nobody got lost anywhere. And if you're Gen Z and someone ever told you that something's wrong with you, hear this. You're okay. Everything they called a bug is just how a living, smart human adapts to a very difficult world. And you're doing it better than you think. And if you were watching to understand your child, your student, or your coworker, now you know. They're not broken and they're not lost. They're just growing up in a world you never had. And it looks like they're managing. If this resonated, subscribe. This is where I break down generations honestly, without labels. And in the comments, tell me which generation you belong to and what you learned about Gen Z or about yourself. I read everyone. Take care of yourselves.